In a lush green meadow just outside a sleepy little town, there lived a clever fox named Charlie. Charlie had a beautiful orange coat, sharp eyes, and a mind that was always working, scheming, and planning. He was known throughout the forest for his quick wit and smooth words. One sunny afternoon, Charlie was wandering through the meadow when he caught a delightful scent in the air. As he followed the scent, he came upon a grapevine laden with plump, ripe grapes hanging high above the ground. Charlie's mouth watered at the sight of the grapes. He could already taste their sweet juiciness and feel the cool burst of flavor as he bit into them. They were perfect, glistening in the sunlight, their deep purple skins shining like jewels. He smiled to himself, thinking of the feast that awaited him. But as he leapt up to grab the grapes, he quickly realized that they were much higher than he expected. He jumped again and again, but no matter how hard he tried, the grapes were just out of reach. Frustrated, he backed up and ran towards the vine with all his might, leaping as high as he could. Still, he could not reach them. Charlie wasn't one to give up easily. He thought to himself, I'll just take a run at it from a different angle. With renewed determination, he took a few steps back, crouched low to the ground, and sprinted toward the vine with all his strength. He jumped again, his legs springing off the ground with powerful force. But the grapes remained tantalizingly high above him. He landed with a soft thud and huffed, wiping the sweat from his brow. At that moment, a rabbit named Eddie hopped by. Eddie was a simple, friendly creature who always had time to chat. He noticed Charlie's frustration and, with a curious tilt of his head, asked, "Hey, Charlie, what's the matter?" Charlie looked up at the rabbit, trying to mask his annoyance, but his frustration was clear. "Those grapes," Charlie said, nodding toward the vine. "They're just out of reach. I've tried everything, and I can't get them." Eddie tilted his head again and smiled. "Oh, those grapes, they sure look delicious. But, sometimes the best things are just a little too hard to reach, don't you think?" Charlie glared at him. "I don't need any help, Eddie. I'll get them. Just wait and see." And with that, he continued his relentless attempts, jumping higher and higher, each time becoming more winded and exhausted. After what seemed like hours, Charlie finally stopped, panting and exhausted. His muscles ached, and his determination was starting to fade. The grapes, still hanging above him, were just as unreachable as when he first laid eyes on them. Charlie sat down beneath the vine, scowling up at the fruit. He was quiet for a moment, lost in thought, his tail flicking in frustration. Finally, after a long silence, Charlie stood up and dusted himself off. With a smug look on his face, he turned to Eddie, who had been watching all along. "You know what?" Charlie said with a grin. I've been thinking. Those grapes are probably sour anyway. I'm not going to waste any more time on them. Why would I want something that's not even worth having? They're not as great as I thought they were." Eddie, who had been quietly listening, smiled and said, "Well, maybe that's true, Charlie. Sometimes when we can't reach something, we convince ourselves that it wasn't what we wanted in the first place." Charlie nodded, trying to act casual, though deep down he was still a little disappointed. "Exactly," he said. "I'm sure there are other things in the forest that are much better than those grapes. I don't need them." Eddie gave him a thoughtful look. "It's okay to want things, Charlie, but it's also okay to walk away when they're out of reach. Maybe there's something else you'll find that's just as good, or even better, without all the effort." Charlie looked at the grapes one last time. They seemed to mock him now, hanging just out of his reach. He sighed, turned around, and walked away, his head held high, though he couldn't entirely shake the feeling that he had missed out on something special. As he made his way through the meadow, he reminded himself that there would be other opportunities, other things to chase, other dreams to pursue, but for now, those grapes were a thing of the past, and Charlie decided to focus on the other wonders the forest had to offer. In the end, Charlie's lesson was clear. Sometimes, when you can't have something, it's easy to convince yourself it wasn't worth having anyway. But the truth was, the grapes had been just out of reach, and no matter how much he convinced himself otherwise, he would never truly forget the sweetness he had imagined.